Demand for education on wildfire mitigation is at an all-time high. And since there is no public-facing website or campaign underway, there is a lot of misinformation and duplication of efforts. Colorado has excellent guides buried in several technical websites with photos of mountain homes on them. Public education is another area that could benefit from consolidation. Does the state have any plans to educate the public on our state's high fire risks? Senator Cutter.
Well, thank you. We actually passed, let's see, it's Senate Bill 22007 last year to do a little bit of public relations, a little bit of outreach around this. I mean, honestly, it would have been great to do more, but you know, we took the budget money that we were able to do, and we put it around increasing education during Wildfire Awareness Month, which is May. So we just put some extra resources around that, and you know, talking about mitigation and all the grants and things that we have available at the state level.
We also at the governor's office have the ability to do more. I want to introduce Jonathan Asher from our office. Jonathan, thanks to Senator Fenberg and others, we now have a climate preparedness office. And what does that mean? It's not the greenhouse gas emissions. That's a different thing. This is for what's happening: increased risk of flood, fires, drought. It's the medium and long-term planning around that, including education. So the governor's office didn't have the resources to do anything in that space. Now we have a team. He also works with Department of Natural Resources, Department of Ag, kind of the relevant agencies where there's also our staffing up on this very important topic of how we deal with the impact of climate change with all of the areas that it touches, from a natural disaster, agriculture, a livability, a water perspective, and all the other implications.
People who live in the Marshall area report that there have been numerous fires due to high winds knocking down power lines there. Boulder County could pay to bury the lines. Should the state force communities and/or Xcel to bury lines in areas that are at high risk? And this is an area that gets a lot of high winds.
Yeah, we don't typically force a community to have underground lines. It would be up to the community, and like anything, it's a cost-benefit analysis the community can do. What we have done at the state, and I worked on this federally too, is making sure that utility companies like Xcel don't have extra liability for doing fire mitigation near their lines. And so that's an important thing, because many of them are willing to do the extra work as long as they're not creating an extra risk for themselves. So I think in this case, getting them, utility companies, to be able to do the work in and around their lines to take down potential fuel is probably one of the more productive routes. I mean, as a practical matter, you could require underground in some areas, but the vast majority of power lines across our state, especially the larger ones, they're all going to be above ground. So I mean, it's only going to be a small fraction you're talking about putting underground anyway if you were to do that.
Right. There are some incentives out there clearly for Xcel to do this. We have 27 fire districts in Boulder County, and this may be another local question as well that we can get to later, but the after action reports show firefighters were in the dark and could not communicate. Too many systems, frequencies. There are efforts to improve coordination, but there is resistance to consolidation despite better communication, response times, and cost savings. Can the state help incentivize this?
The hard part about consolidating is harmonizing the funding streams and the way that they each are funded, usually through a mill levy. It sounds complicated, but basically you're in different tax districts, and the fact that they have different amounts of funding is hard to combine, because they usually have debt, often have debt that they service with that funding. So that shouldn't be an excuse. I mean, it is figure outable. It's just not easy. But I think from the state side, we could look at how we could streamline the integration or harmonization of funding to make it easier for districts that want to combine, because it is just very hard right now as a practical matter to combine.
So I want to touch on another piece of legislation that is making its way through the legislature this session, House Bill 1174 by Representatives Amabile and Brown. It's going to go a long way toward making sure homeowners are better informed about how much insurance they need to rebuild. But some fire victims say it doesn't go far enough. And Commissioner Conway, I know you were at the first hearing on this bill because I was there with you. Some homeowners who had guaranteed replacement costs say they're battling their insurers over what true replacement cost is. Would you support an amendment to the bill that defines replacement cost and requires insurers to make the distinction between that and the guaranteed replacement cost?
So I think, Shaun, that the key to that conversation is consumer education and whatever mechanism that we're going to go about doing it, whether it's defining it differently in that piece of legislation or not, isn't going to solve the problem, and that we really have to actually get the information to consumers about the difference between guaranteed replacement and replacement cost coverage. Mm-hmm. And that's really weedsy, and people, the vast majority of people they don't care, right? Then they don't care to understand, but what we need to get the message through to them from their insurance companies and from insurance agents, and that's really the purpose of that bill. Right? The purpose of that bill is to get better information to consumers so that they understand what they need to be covered for and how to get that coverage. That is where we believe that the industry as a whole kind of fell down before the Marshall Fire and before fires just in general. And it's a problem that's pervasive around the country. Underinsurance is an issue that every state deals with after every catastrophe. So we're trying very, very hard to come up with a solution that we think will work for Colorado, and that's really focused on getting consumers, getting homeowners better information. And we think that's going to be a solution that really does solve the problem.
And the sponsor is Representative Amabile is here. I understand Representative Brown is here now. Is that right? Representative Kyle Brown is here now. Welcome. For those of you who haven't met him yet, he's probably some of your representatives. But what's very important here is his professional experience. What he did before he became your state rep is he actually worked for this guy, for Mike Conway. So Kyle Brown knows insurance inside and out from a consumer advocacy perspective, and so that's a particularly timely and impactful voice that Boulder County has in the state legislature with Kyle Brown.
I have a follow-up question along those lines too. Many homeowners didn't factor in debris removal when they purchased insurance. Should insurance companies be required to offer additional coverage for that, similar to the replacement costs that they're going to have to offer?
So most insurance policies do include debris removal, but it's a question that I think is very valid, Shaun, and it's a question that the folks up that were impacted by East Troublesome are dealing with quite a bit. The distinction between East Troublesome and the Marshall Fire really is the FEMA assistance with the Marshall Fire and the debris removal connected to that. And unfortunately, the same didn't occur up in the East Troublesome Fire, but I think it's absolutely part of the conversation. I know some of the county commissioners, County Commissioner Rich Tomino up in Grand County, because of the East Troublesome Fire, is very interested in potentially having an amendment on the bill to address that issue, and it's certainly something we can consider.
Rents in Boulder County are already among the highest in the state. After the fire, with so many people displaced, we saw rents triple in some cases. Would you support temporary rent stabilization after a disaster? I think this is for you, Governor, or Senator Cutter.
I would just say the big problem is lack of inventory of housing. So, I mean, somebody's in it no matter what, the very small vacancy rate. We need more housing. So we are going to be working on more housing, and that doesn't materialize overnight, but we want to create a framework around more housing near where jobs are, and we're looking forward to working with the legislature to do that.
Right now, if there is a dispute between a homeowner and a restoration company over cleaning, the only recourse that a homeowner has is to hire an attorney and sue the company. What the company has is to file a lien on the homeowner's property. One older resident was almost foreclosed on, and I called Commissioner Conway's office, I referred to this earlier, and his office got involved and helped her. But can we create a better process for resolving these disputes?
So I think the short answer is yes, right? And it's actually very much connected to what the Congressman was talking about, that every time we deal with a disaster, we learn something new, and we learn how to address issues, I think, in a better format. Again, I'm not sure that's exactly my shop's role to figure out that solution for kind of a systemic solution, but that being said, I want to hear from folks whenever they're dealing with these types of issues, because exactly as Shaun pointed out, we were able to get involved and we were able to help out this one particular homeowner, And the more that we learn about, the more types of complaints that we get, the more that we learn, the more that we can partner with our other sister agencies to find those systemic solutions. But what's most important from my vantage point, folks, right now as we sit here today, is that if you're dealing with those types of situations, call us. Go onto our website, file a complaint with us, doi.colorado.gov. Our phone number is 303-894-7499. That's what we're here for. It might not feel like it's directly related to insurance. Quite often it's not, and that was the perfect kind of example. We can still help, and that's what we want to do.
Thank you. Governor, I know this is going to be a hugely controversial question. I'm going to ask it anyway. Not for you, with local governments. They won't probably be pleased with me for asking this, but you're working on statewide zoning to help spur affordable home development. While Superior, Louisville, and Boulder County have all reduced permitting fees for rebuilds, they are still enormously expensive, and they slow the process considerably. What do you think about a statewide permit?
So first of all, before Commissioner Levy has a heart attack, it's not statewide zoning. We're not trying to take away anything like that. We are actually, we're absolutely, and local folks are at the table, we are trying to find a way to expedite permitting for homes, and especially for areas that are locally determined as single family zones, for transit corridors. So we don't currently have a specific dimension around disaster recovery. I guess we could be open to that in the iterations of the discussion. It hasn't come up a lot, but the main goal of this is more housing availability near where jobs are, which we need to do as a state. We need to do in an interjurisdictional way because of transit in particular. So we actually then have more people living along rail, bus, and that means more customers, which means lower costs and more regular service when you have that. They all factor together in a virtuous cycle, but also kind of empowering homeowners to be part of the solution, adding additional units. So that's the kind of thing that we are looking at. Certainly leaning into the local determination on many areas, for instance, local around affordability versus market, those decisions, what is affordability and what percentage of average income or AMI in an area do we need housing and how much do we need for market, all very local discussions. But across the board, from market to low income to affordable, we simply need more housing in a way that's sustainable, meaning not exurban, further out, more cars on the road, more water usage. It's got to be more opportunities for people to afford to live near where jobs are. So that's a very important discussion that we're having. Because even without this horrific tragedy, we all know that housing is becoming very hard to afford in Boulder County, and it's not just Boulder County. It's many parts of our state that are really experiencing this crisis right now.
And that legislation yet to come will address some permitting in it too, then? In addition to determining where that housing goes?
I would say that we're open to the discussion. Proposition 123 includes some provisions around that, namely, so that uses the carrot, time for approval. So we're definitely interested, or denial, they can deny. But how do you make sure that when you want a permit, it doesn't get stuck somewhere for years? And so I'd have to look at Prop 23. I think it was 90 days, if I recall, or counties or cities have to commit to this to get the funds.
Right.
So all those things are being talked about, right? And with that, by the way, so I would say if the state piece goes towards some sort of time clock, we would want to provide the resources for the extra planners needed for the cities and counties to turn it around. So we are committed to saying anything that would be required would not be unfunded. But if it's going to be faster, we'd want to make sure that we were helping to add extra planners to do more of the work, and that might come out of Prop 123 too. So that's all part of the discussion around the making sure that nothing gets buried forever in paperwork, and that we, of course, have a thoughtful process, because you also don't want to wake up and have a 30-story building next to you if you're a homeowner. I mean, that's not going to happen. But how do you do this? How do you balance the two?
Mm-hmm. California has exempted all wildfire-related insurance settlements from state taxes. Congressman Neguse, thank you, is co-sponsoring a bill to exempt the settlements from federal taxes. When will Colorado do the same on a preemptive basis? We know we're not there yet, but should we get to that point,
So can I say something, actually, because tax policy, I'm kind of a wonka. So we actually conform with federal tax policy as a default. So if the feds
so
were
if
to
he
do that,
passes
we
this-
would not need legislation. We would
That's great.
conform with it. There's
Okay.
been a few times where we go the other way, where we don't want something to conform and then we go out. But we would automatically conform as soon as Congressman Negus's passes his bill. That would be state law. We wouldn't have to do anything.
All right, I think that we have probably run out of time, and I just want to, again, thank you all so much for taking the time to be here. Did you have any final remarks? I want to allow you to, any wrap-ups here.
I just was going to say, obviously there's a lot of residents here from Louisville and Superior, but for those who are Superior residents, just following up on the settlement issue that Shaun mentioned, and the federal legislation that we're fighting very hard to get across the finish line. It's bipartisan, by the way. Two of your trustees were in Washington just a few weeks ago making the case on Capitol Hill, and I think their efforts were successful in terms of getting a couple more members of Congress onto that bill. So it's been a team effort, and I would just echo the comments that our insurance commissioner made, whom I first met when I was at DORA, running DORA before I was in Congress. And that is to say, please continue reaching out to our office. Many of you have been in touch with our staff, Shane Atkinson and others, and I see some heads nodding. Please let us know. To the extent that you're grappling with an obstacle, please let our office know. Even if it isn't necessarily something that has a federal nexus, you'd be surprised at the ability for our incredible team to be able to get to work in assisting. A great example is the reverse mortgage issue that I know has come up in a couple of different instances in Superior, and thanks to Shaun's work, elevating that. We just sent off a letter yesterday, working with our Boulder County Treasurer, who also alerted us to this issue, to the FHA. So it's a unique, nuanced example of, I think, ways in which we can all partner together to get through this together.
Governor, any final remarks?
No, thank you all, and again, let us be of service. Call our insurance office, insurance commissioner, with any issues that you probably, if you haven't yet, and you're working with your insurance company or not working with your insurance company, and let us know how we can be of help.
Thank you again for coming. Thank you all for being here. Stick around. We're going to let these guys go.
Thank you.
I have three questions, but I'll take one so that my colleagues can also ask questions. It's been 16 months since the fire happened. Why do we not know what caused this fire, and when will we know? We keep getting told, we're going to know very soon. When are we going to know, and what's going on with investigating this fire so we know what happened? Thank you.
Is my mic on?
Yes.
I'm looking around.
Yeah, you got the sheriff.
Oh, yeah, there he is. I was looking for the sheriff.
Nobody else wants to answer that question.
No.
We are close, but we are not going to determine or announce the cause and origin of the fire until we are completely done with our investigation. And hopefully in the next month or two, we will be done, and we will announce it to the community. That is our goal, but I caution you, every time we get close to thinking we're done, something else comes up that we need to investigate. And we want to make sure we're being very diligent and answering all the questions that even we have about how the fire started. So my commitment to you is, hopefully in the next month or two, we will have it for you.
Great, I appreciate that, because we've been told that for quite a while, and I appreciate the diligence to make that happen. Everyone wants to know, so thank you.
Me as well. My house burned down in the fire, and I want to know how it started as well.
Sure. You've handed it to a third, you've got a third party reviewing this too, is my
Not yet, but we are working with the district attorney's office and having some other district attorneys help us review the case to make sure that we have answered every question, crossed every T, dotted every I.
Thanks. Another question? Come down to the microphone there.
Hello, my name is Eric Hevola. Thank you for this format. I would just like to raise concern and bring it to further attention that this whole thing has been a huge process. Of course, we lost 2 homes in the fire. The biggest trouble that I'm having right now out of dealing with insurance and dealing with lenders is dealing with the SBA. And it's appalling that our tax dollars are still stuck in the system, and I honestly feel like I've been a business owner for 25 years. I know how to fill out paperwork, but this has been the most exhausting process that I've ever dealt with in my life. I've dealt with literally hundreds of mortgage loans, and this tops everything, and I don't know if there's something that can be done. This was a nationally declared disaster, and I feel like I'm being treated like just unfairly. The process of putting in like literally a dozen requests to have funding reopened is, to me, just completely unacceptable, and I just want whoever the proper legislation, politics, whatever it takes, to break the floodgate open on whatever is holding this back in the processes. I know this is a federal program through SBA. I'm grateful that it's there, but it's broken and it's not working. I know that I'm not the only one that's dealing with this, so.
Ashley, do you want to?
Yeah, so thank you for telling us about your issue with the SBA, and others have had similar issues. And so what we found is that they are receptive to learning lessons from our disaster. It doesn't fix it for you today or tomorrow. What does fix it for you right away is letting us know so that we can get the information to our senators, who have been very receptive to helping us, and Joe, helping us so much in Congress as well to get this addressed. And so if we elevate it to them, we have seen on a case-by-case basis the ability to address the issues with the SBA. And they are very receptive to trying to fix it going forward. This isn't what the SBA normally does. Like, they normally do small business administration, and it is good that the federal government's offering a program for us. And it's very frustrating that we're sort of a test case to understand within the context of our income levels and our level of devastation that families are experiencing. They're just not used to dealing with this kind of thing. So please email us and we can get you in contact with the senator's office, or email them directly, and they can help with your SBA case to get resolution for your issues.
Great. Who is emailing us?
You can email me at astolzman@bouldercounty.org.
I'm here to advocate and ask for your support to pressure BVSD to test the 8 schools that were near the Marshall Fire area, 4,500 children, to ensure that it indeed is free of fire byproducts. It took 10 months for me to remediate my home, and even after it was completely cleaned and it had great air quality, we found char on my walls. And so my entire house had to be encapsulated and then repainted again. And yet the schools have their ceiling tiles. They did it in 5 days. Avista Hospital took 3 weeks. And I have data that shows how long each school was in the smoke plume, what the air quality, how hazardous it was at that time. And again, it's 4,500 kids. BVSD is saying the vents were closed, and so therefore minimal contamination could have happened, which I commend them, because while we didn't get evacuation notices, apparently they were able to close all the vents before the plume reached our schools. They have said because there are no guidelines or regulations that are required for testing, that they don't really need to, because they're experts who, let's just think of conflict of interest, are saying that no, the schools are safe. And yet I know that the Boulder County Health Department have had conversations that this is the type of event that they're going to be tracing cancer cases in 15 to 20 years back to the Marshall Fire. So I would really appreciate your support. There is a petition. If anybody wants to sign it, we have 260 signatures so far to help us keep our kids safe. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I will just say that as a resident of Louisville and the Mayor Pro Tem, and someone who did lose a house in the Marshall Fire, that I totally identify with the lady's comments. Children are the most vulnerable because they're still developing. And so the impact of any kind of chemicals on them, particularly in their respiratory systems, can be long-term. I would absolutely support any efforts to get the schools remediated and at least have the measures taken to see what is in there. Thank you.
Can I just add to that? So I'll just go out and say that I think on behalf of the town of Superior, that a joint letter from Superior, from Louisville, from Boulder County to BVSD, to the school board, is in order, asking them to spare no expense to make sure that the schools are safe for our kids. I've got kids that are going to BVSD right now, and I share those concerns, and I think that that's the least that we can do, is just to ensure that the schools have been properly cleaned. And if they haven't, then let's take the further steps to make sure that they're clean going forward.
As the governor noted, there's some money out there to help with this remediation.
we'd be happy to join in that. And I think you heard the governor say earlier that there might even be money at the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment to help pay for it. So, yeah, we'll join in that.
Go ahead, question.
Yes, my name is Rodney Mitchell. My family and I, we lost 6 income properties in the Marshall wildfire. 2 of them are smoke damage, still standing, but 4 were in Sagamore, completely destroyed. Probably the most affordable housing that you could find anywhere inside of Boulder County was what we lost. I would like to say 2 things. I'll frame it as a question, like we're on Jeopardy. There was a great deal of money raised for charity for people who lost in the Marshall wildfire. I simply request, could we please have a very clear public accounting of what that money has been spent on, where it is, what's being done with it, who qualifies for it. My question comes from having met with a recovery navigator, and he did explain to me that I did not qualify for any of it. So that leaves me with my insurance company. The other thing I wanted to mention to you is this, and I know this won't be popular, but I was providing extremely affordable housing. Given the circumstances, supply chains, building material, contractors, tradespeople, building permits, zoning requirements, etc., there is no way that I'm going to, well, I shouldn't say there's no way. Please veto, please vote against House Bill 23-115, the repeal of the rent control. It's a loser. We will not get any more housing. We'll have less housing. I would be forced to liquidate what I've lost to people who will likely build $1 million houses, as is the case with Sagamore, and then you could just say there won't be any housing for rental that'll go to wealthy people who can afford to build $1 million house in Sagamore. So with that, I thank you. That's 2 things, but thank you.
I think Tatiana Hernandez is here or was here. She runs the Boulder County Wildfire Fund. Right behind you.
Yeah.
Oh, there she is.
Is there a microphone?
Yeah.
Or should I talk?
Just stand in between them.
Hello. And forgive me, sir. Hi. I did not hear the first part of your comment with regards to your specific circumstances.
Okay. You're wanting me to
Multiple
repeat.
homes, yes?
We lost
Sorry.
6 rental properties in the Marshall wildfire, and they were all affordable housing. These were the kind of housing that if it was still existing, I promise you every person in this room would go, let me get that guy's phone number because I want to rent, because he is really offering a low price for a good quality house. But they're gone.
Oh, and you met with a recovery navigator and they said you were not eligible for any of it.
I was really, other than $20,000 towards a building permit, I'm fighting with insurance companies. They're trying not to pay.
Sure. Okay. Well, first and foremost, I will say that anyone who has questions, there is a website on our site that has a very detailed accounting of everything that's been paid out, everything that is available to date. We will be having a town hall in April to provide everyone an update on where our thinking is with the unallocated funds, where the rebuild funds are currently in terms of disbursement, how the unallocated funds are being invested, all of those sorts of things, as well as above and beyond. I heard your point about a public accounting. So the Community Foundation has an annual audit every year. That is public. The 2021 is currently on our website. You can see the last 2 days of the year where a significant amount of wildfire funds were raised are accounted for in that 2021 audit. Okay. We go above and beyond what nonprofits generally do in their audit and provide additional layer of transparency by pointing out in the audit how much was raised in that year, how much was dispersed in that year. For anyone who received a check directly from the Community Foundation, that's going to be public information in our audited financial statements. And then much of our work is done through intermediaries. So whether that's through the support that folks are getting through Resource Central in the Garden in the Box program, or mental health services through Jewish Family Services, or those of you who are having rebuild supports being provided directly to your building escrow account, et cetera, that's done through some of our intermediaries. But you will see all of that very clearly, hopefully very transparently to your point, on our website currently, and then in our audited financials moving forward.
Do you have a card that I could get
Absolutely,
from you?
of course.
The only other thing I want to add to this is that my insurance agent, like many people here, way underinsured us. So we have a very deep hole to climb out of.
Yeah.
And so that.
And I am incredibly sorry for that. I mean, I think Mike Conway did a really excellent job of describing how unfortunately or universal this problem is. We hear this from folks in California who we tried to reach out to get a better sense of how to meet the need. $43 million is an incredible amount of money, an incredible amount of generosity, and also not nearly enough to cover the whole for everyone.
Yeah, I've actually more or less have locked my head or my mind around just going it alone.
Yeah.
But I mean, if there's some help available for somebody in my situation, great, bring it.
Yeah.
But in any case, I thank you for your response. And I know it's not the popular thing, but House Bill 23-1115 is a loser, and it won't give you what you want.
So we have time for a couple more questions.
Next question. Here we go.
Would you mind passing that down for them, please? My name's John Frost. I'm a permanently disabled veteran in this area. I work in Louisville. On the day of the fire, we tried to push for our boss to allow us to leave, but instead we had people running through fire. No one came through to check any of our vents or the products that we sell. Within 3 days we were open. We had no running water because I reported these OSHA issues. In that picture, you will see me being retaliated against. What are we going to do about businesses that will not think about the safety of their employees first?
You know, that's a very good question. I wish there was an answer. My daughter worked in Superior. My daughter was working in Superior when the fire started, and her boss wouldn't let her go. And they're seeing the bushes and stuff right in front of them. If we can figure out an answer to make that requirement happen, boy, I would love to see some policymaker be able to do that. I don't know what the answer is to that. You'd figure there would be some OSHA requirement. You'd figure there would be some, state employment requirement that if there is something there, you take care of your employees first. They didn't in her case. It scared us.
One more question, please. Right there.
Hi, my name's John Mickle. I live in Louisville, and I'm just kind of curious. In October, the County of Boulder passed a law, enacted something that said they were going to refund everybody's use fees. There's no way to do that. They haven't come up with a process to do it. There's no forms to fill out. Anybody have any idea how one goes about seeing that happen?
Yeah, I can answer that. We did pass that policy. We are working on getting the process set up so that we can issue those refunds. Regardless of when you get your building permit, whether you've already paid your use tax or you're still going to pay it in the future, everybody will get that refunded. It's just getting the process set up, figuring out who's going to issue the checks and all of that, but that money will come back to you. And we're putting all of this on our website. We have an FAQ. We have a whole page devoted to the Marshall Fire. So all of that is on the website if you want to go there.